Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Foscari University of Venice. I'm very proud, on behalf of my university, to host FOREU4ALL workshop, a workshop on very relevant themes and very important to us, to all of us. I would just like to give a brief introduction on where you are now. This is the main building, one of the most beautiful buildings of our university. Foscari University was established in 1868, and in the beginning it was a business school, one of the few business schools in Europe, maybe the second with Antwerp. And since the beginning, this was a business school which combined the study of humanities, languages, and economics and management. So the governors of this city wanted a university projected towards international relations, and especially towards Asia, because of the tradition of the merchants going to Asia, to China, and Marco Polo, the legacy of Marco Polo, actually. So from the outset, the school combined economic, commercial studies with language instruction, both Western and Eastern languages. And the first languages we started here since the beginning were Turkish and Japanese. And then we added many other languages from Asia and, of course, from Europe. So in 1935, it became a state university, and later added other faculties such as sciences. And so our campuses are in the main city, in the main island of Venice, so our buildings and our students are scattered in this island, which is the main island, and in the scientific campus in Mestre, so 10 minutes from here. So this area of Foscari, of Venice, is called Dorso Duro, which means hard back, and designates one of the 6 historic sestieri of Venice. The position of Foscari on the Grand Canal is both symbolic and strategic. It is the first location of the palace, and the name Foscari comes from the name of one of the most famous doge in Venice. So Foscari is the name of the family, and he built this the building, the main building, where the administration, central administration is, at the end of the 15th century. So this aula, this room, is dedicated to one of our rectors, professor, one of the most famous Italian intellectuals. So it is called Silvio Trentin, and it is one of the jewels of Foscari historical venues. So it is called Aula Magno Silvio Trentin, located in the Renaissance building of Cadolfin. The hall, dating back to the 15th century and later enriched with Baroque decoration, is famous for the fresco ceiling, for the Murano glass chandeliers, and you see the large mirrors, and for this reason it is also called Sala degli Specchi. Behind these mirrors there were the canvases by Giambattista Tiepolo. So I would like to finish here and just give you a very warm welcome, wish you a successful workshop for you for all, and just add that we are proud to host this workshop within the EUTOPIA week, and we belong, as you probably know, to the Alliance EUTOPIA. So have a nice day and a nice workshop and a nice day here in Venice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are very grateful, distinguished rector, for your nice introduction and just familiarizing us with the special place where our workshop is organized. We are very grateful to your wonderful team. And this is a great moment for us to express in a very short speech. Now I'm starting to try in 5 minutes, no longer. Under the aegide of Back to the Future of the Bologna Witness looks at the European degrees evolution and transformation. Me, I was the witness. The European degree is part of an evolutionary process marked by continuity and an early pioneering role, which is particularly visible through the work of the topical subgroup on joint European degree and Science 2020. It's very important to mention that we're starting to work from the time. The group has acted as a sounding board also for the Commission and for the other institutions representing the voice of the university community concerning educational policies, directions and development as well. The group was provided for the very beginning with a position and a strong one in the practice build and in concrete experiences for different reasons, different universities and different experiences. Now we would like to give a great tribute and gratitude to our former co-chairs. And I'm starting with Neringa. Neringa is here. She was setting up every last Friday at 9 o'clock sharp the meeting of the group. That's tradition. 5 years we are just keeping on our hands and continuing. This is just the Back to the Future. This is why I'm starting with nominating that. Then it's also Dagmar Rötches from Germany. She's working now from the German Quality Assurance Agencies. Mirko Varano, you know very well. Elsewhere it's Mirko. It's presenting and representing Europe and the European direction as well. Also very much grateful to Jan Mael. You have been always as part of our subgroup. We are not identifying you as an outsider. You are always insider and a very important one. Marichel, you supported much more than others what it's publicly and advertising and preparing fantastic connections. As last but not the least, that's very important for me, to my special partner and friend Laura. Laura is there, dressed wonderfully. You admire already her skills on creating a spatial, fashionable appearance. That's fantastic. And now I have 3 minutes to complete the rest. The European degree was launched as a major political initiative. This is a real discourse. It was just something more, but now I'm starting with what is important to be shared with you. Yet it's not merely a political process, and this is something we, the member of the European Degree Working Group, understood from the very beginning. It stands as one of the most important European policy lines ever proposed and officially endorsed. But in turn, it must be aligned with the Bologna process and its instrument, the famous Bologna tools. Our first idea for reflection during our workshop. European degree, it's in a line, a strategic line, which needs to be aligned. The European degree was conceived as one of the new, refined, and more elevated, and I'm underlining no means to understand elitist, pathways for the recognition of studies, going beyond the classical recognition or regulatory framework. Yet it must be integrated and acknowledged at the level of the member states. Our second idea for reflection, European degree, it's a new way of recognition which needs to be recognized. The European degree was initially designed to offer a unifying and standardized vision, especially in the curriculum development approach because of the anticipated limitations, barriers, and constraints. But its evolution is now moving decisively towards diversity, creativity, and flexibility. The third idea for reflection, European degree is the most complex curricular standardized shape which needs to be flexibilized. The European degree has been supported as a model built on mutual trust, mutual support, and mutual promotion. I was listening last week in Brussels. It was Peter van der Heijden. I'm sure that you remember this very interesting personage, General Director, at the time when the Bologna process has been launched. And he was stressing the idea of trust, trust in universities, trust in each other. And I've been there, and the other colleagues also attending this meeting. Yes, it were fully aware that it must to secure through robust, deeply embedded quality assurance mechanism. And here we are today, together to our colleagues, friends and partners from the quality assurance topical subgroup, mutually engaged in a unique act of synergy. Thank you very much, dear Mara. And she's in the left of my, to you and to your baby, very patient baby, a European degree and quality assurance joint baby. That's fantastic. She's pregnant, and we are very much appreciating fantastic efforts to share with us the energy. And to your extraordinary colleagues from the Quality Assurance Group for a long-standing partnership starting these days. The fourth idea, European degree is the supreme way to promote trans-institutional and transnational trust, which needs to be strongly quality assured. The European degree has received strong public policy endorsement for building a coherent structure, curricular units, and common administrative and technical recognition mechanism. Yes, but it's important to needs life, emotion, motivation. It needs our students, life, and the main beneficiaries. This requires a reconceptualization of academic learning and the new arrangements for a few ways of academic inclusion. We are trying to call in my alliance, in Civis, we are starting to work and to reflect on the possibility to use the word transclusion for that. This is not a decision finally taken, but it's important to mention as a matter of reflection. The fifth and the last idea. The European degree represents the most advanced form of curricular organization at this level, which needs to be adapted to our students' needs through a new rethinking of learning arrangements as well. Finally, the last but not the least, coming from someone who was the fitness, as I told you, as a major processes, the European degree has imagined as a mechanism of constructing a new academic identity of the European alliances. But it has gradually detached from the alliances as itself and create another vision, which is a little bit through constraints, obstacles, and limitations, aligning itself with the expectations of all European universities and not necessarily limited to the alliances. It's likely become, and I would like elegant and ethically say, probably, one of the strongest forms of the Europeanization through a branding process in a very competitive advantage at the context, global context, and why not in this competition through soft diplomacy. Until then, however, at the road towards the authentic implementation, we strongly believe that the success of this unique event, the first one organized at this level, being us all part of it today, a success for European university alliances, for FOREU4ALL, and for our alliances, for a success to our universities, a success for the Europe for the future. Where? In this magic place called Venice, or Back to the Future, a place much more realistic than many others in our students' future lives, or to our academic staff. At the time, when I was the witness, we just called Bologna promoters, and you remember, why not today we can call European degree advocates. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to give you a very long speech. I'm a very relaxed, small speech person for this opening. So, as Romita said, I'm Mara Noblet. I'm the chair of the Quality Assurance Topical Group. Most of you know me because I've been spamming you for the past year and a half with emails and events and asking for your testimonies and your own alliances practices. Today, what I want to start with is to a small reminder to all of you in the room that you are here or part of a community, a FOREU4ALL community, either through your membership in the European degree and joint programs topical group, the Quality Assurance Topical Group, whether you're an external partner to FOREU4ALL or whether you're part of an alliance in some way or another. And this word community is very important because beyond what we will do and our work in the next 2 days on the European degree labels, criteria and guidelines, we are also here to actually build that community. So look around, because in the room next to you, people most probably do the same thing as you do. And I personally know that in my university, in my alliance, it's a challenge because most people don't really understand what I do. And I guess you're in a room of people that understand and that can relate. And this is a very unique opportunity, and I'm very thankful for this. So beyond the official thank yous that will be given and have been given by my co-organizers, I'd like to thank you for being part of that community, for actually making it active, for participating in all of our meetings, for sharing your practices, and for being willing to create what we wish to create in the upcoming years for the European degree label, for our students, and for our institutions. So I wish you a very fruitful, very interesting, very nice 2-day workshop, and you'll hear more from me in the upcoming days, of course.
Good morning and welcome to everybody. My name is Laura Colò. I also been stalking you for the last 3 years, maybe. I'll also would like to start from the end, like my colleagues, since the energy is still high, and starting with thanking Rector Lippiello and also Fondazione Ca' Foscari for hosting us, but also the organizing committee who helped us during the organization of this event, which was completely volunteer. And I'll ask these persons to stand as I called them. Jonathan Grigan-Moore, Ulrike Cravagna, Dorothy Gregor, Alexander Whip, Mario Calabrese, Merichel Chavez, Andrea Brose, Suzanne Lippold, Mara Noblet, and last but not least, Romita Yuku, who has been inspiring me since the beginning. And thank you for your trust. If you meet these people during the day, don't forget to thank them individually. And also, they will be stalking you during these 2 days. So remember their faces. Back to business. No, this is not true. Today I will be your facilitator. Tomorrow Mara will be your facilitator. And the idea of this meeting is not to have another event, another conference. We really want to have a working meeting. So I kindly ask the one who have their laptops open to close them and to focus for the rest 48 hours. We really would like to have you engaging, even during the panels. Why? So thanks to the FOREU topical group in the past, the policy experimentation projects, also the European Commission, the Council Presidency, we could have this spring the Council resolution of the joint European degree label and the Council recommendation of a European quality assurance and recognition system in higher education. I'm sure you are all familiar with these 2 documents. If you're not, you have them in your email. But our work is not ended yet. At this moment, the Policy Lab and member states are working towards guidelines so that by mid-2026, we can roll out the joint European degree label. We already had a consultation on 24th October with the European Degree and Joint Program Topical Group, the PPMI and the European Commission, and some representatives of the Quality Assurance Topical Group to see which criteria are not really clear for us, the practitioners. Today, now the guideline, we have a first draft. There is a first draft of the guidelines, but we can still maybe help give them our recommendations on how to make this label more ambitious and flexible. How we will do that during these 2 days? We will have 3 panels. In these 3 panels, there are members of the advisory group to the Policy Lab present, the European Commission, student representative experts in quality assurance, and we will discuss the process and meaning of the guidelines, existing quality assurance process we could use, and possible verification and assessment methods. This will be followed by 2 breakout rooms, one today, one tomorrow. One to explore the issues identified from the policy experimentation projects in the last year, and the other really to look on existing practices to verify the criteria in alliances. We will also have, of course, networking opportunities, a poster session, and we will also have a moment where we will ask you if there are some questions that we are not addressing during this event, and we will meet tonight to try to give responses tomorrow. So, without further ado, I would like to start with the first panel, the first panelists, and call on stage Jan-Maël Bidot from the European Commission. Jan-Maël comes from the European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture. He is Policy Officer in Higher Education Unit and has been closely involved in joint European degree initiative. Welcome, Jan-Maël. Then Jonathan Griegen-Moore, I'm sorry for this pronunciation, from the University of Groningen and the Enlight Alliance, works on education strategy and supports international joint programs both within his university and the Alliance level. He's also a very active member of our group. Welcome, Jonathan. Juan Rayon Gonzalez, Strategic Manager in Ingenium, and previously worked in higher education unit at the European Commission, focusing on the European degree and quality assurance. He brings together experience from the Commission, from the alliances, and from the student side through his leadership role in the Erasmus Student Network. Welcome, Juan. And last but not least, Laura Howard joins us from the University of Cadiz and is member of the advisory group to the Policy Lab. She has over 25 experience in internationalization of higher education, has served as president of the EAIE, and recently coordinated one of the policy experimentation project, the ED Lab, bringing together several alliances. Welcome, Laura. Our first panel is called Understanding the Guidelines, Purpose, Challenges, and Added Value. The fil rouge of this panel will be the level of ambition we would like to achieve through the criteria. But to give you the context, we have Jan-Maël delivering a brief presentation on what is happening. Now, let's see if I can use this computer properly. Jan-Maël, finally, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Apologies for my voice. I almost didn't make it to come here today due to a bit of illness, but I managed, and I really wanted to be here as well, not only because it's in Venice, and I have never been to Venice, so it's nice to see, but also because the role this topical group played in the initiative since the beginning has been absolutely instrumental in helping the initiative to be the success that it is today. I don't think we would have managed to convince so many national authorities without your support. So thank you very much already from my side. So now what is going to happen? As I said, the ministers of education of all the EU countries have adopted a text in May that says they want a joint European degree label as from mid-2026. So in order to make that happen, we need to have implementation guidelines. So quality assurance agencies of different countries can actually start offering the label. So there is a process you can apply to get the label. There is a process to award the label to you. We are planning to have some support, of course, for quality assurance agencies to get ready and to start issuing the label. And in mid-2026, the fastest ones, the most enthusiastic ones, will start offering that. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen the first draft of this guideline that was prepared by some of the experts. We are not officially supposed to share it, but I'm pretty sure it's not easy, it's not hard to find. And I think that's a good thing. So we have a bit of the methodology that is set by the text that the ministers have adopted. In this text, it says very clearly that the label is to be awarded by quality assurance agencies or self-accrediting institutions, depending on the circumstances of the joint program, the composition of the consortium. It doesn't say exactly how it's going to work, but obviously there were some big questions at the first meeting of the Policy Lab, with some countries not so comfortable with self-accrediting institutions questioning if they should be allowed to deliver the label. Well, that's in the text, so we must have something for them to be able to do that. In a way, if we trust them to deliver diploma, we should be able to trust them to deliver labels. But of course, they need guarantee that the process is not going to be out of control, and so we need to find a way to provide a reassurance that even when it's a self-accrediting institutions delivering the label, there's a process that makes sure they are doing it on a correct basis, and there are different ways to do that. All the criteria are needed to meet the label. That's also clearly stated in the text, so you can't just pick some of them and say you deserve the label. You need to comply with them all. And the assessment of whether a program complies with the label criteria or not needs to be based as much as possible on existing documentation. And there, it's very important, for example, that the cooperation agreement contains as much information as possible to make the process as easy for you and the quality assurance agencies to check. You can prove compliance just by having things in the cooperation agreements clearly stated. It is very clear that there is no intent of duplication of quality assurance processes. This is different. We are not talking about accreditation of programs. We are not talking about external evaluation of programs. We are talking about the award of a label on programs that have already been accredited, and of course in compliance with the ESG and the standards of the European approach. But we're not asking to do that again. This is just a precondition to get access to the label. We don't give a label to programs that have not been accredited or not been evaluated. It's a precondition. We don't aim for a complicated process. I think no one wants that, neither you, neither the quality assurance agencies, neither the national authorities. It should be easy to apply for it and easy to award it. Doesn't mean it should be easy to get it, but the process should be easy. And some basic principles for the criteria. We can't change the wording of the criteria. No matter even I would like to change some of the wording of some of them, we can't. That's it. They are set by the ministers. We don't change them anymore. The interpretation we make of the criteria cannot really contradict what the criteria says, because that would be tricking the process. And the criteria that raise the most discussions are usually the European dimension criteria, but there is clear basic principle that it should not be used as a way to impose stuff into curricula or teaching methods or things like this. It is supposed to be open and allow flexibility for higher education institutions to demonstrate compliance in many, many different ways. We're just looking for a dimension to be reflected one way or another. The tricky part will be to keep it simple but meaningful. How do we aim for ambition while making sure it is still accessible? We could have the most ambitious label of the world, but if no one can get it, there is little added value to it. If the label is just given to any joint program that exists today, it also has very little value because it doesn't really drive any innovation, any change, any ambition. So we need to strike a balance between these two things and have a common baseline that is meaningful. Some outcome of the first Policy Lab that took place on the 18th of November. So the Policy Lab is basically a group, almost the same size as our group today, about 60 people that come from all EU member states and some non-EU member states and representative organizations. They met for the first time on 18th of December to discuss the first draft that I'm sure many of you have read. And there we had quite lengthy discussions on different aspects. It appeared quite clearly that they still need a lot of clarification to be made on very basic principles. We had many questions about what is a joint degree. One would assume this is set by the Bologna process, but apparently not. So we need to include very clear specification of when we talk about the joint degree, we really talk about one single document that is awarded by higher education institution. Then we can decide if that requirement should also apply to non-EU partners or only to EU partners, or to what extent this can be complemented by individual national degrees or not. But the principle that there should be a joint degree, and that's it. The role of self-crediting institutions, already touched upon it. There is a temptation by some to try to renegotiate a bit what was already approved by the ministers. So it's clear that some don't like part of the criteria and would like to get rid of it, but that cannot be done. And that's a message that we are clearly passing from the Commission side. This is it, we have to respect what the Council said. There is a general consensus on keeping the criteria open, where there is room for interpretation. And there, it's interesting to see the divide between ministries and representative of quality assurance agencies, because the ministries, they want the criteria to be as open as possible, so it fits their national regulations as much as possible. Quality assurance agencies look from the other side and like, yeah, but I need to check that. So I need guidance on how I can check that. Until when can I go to say yes or no? And there again, we have to strike the balance into guiding them to say, you can say yes as long as it's within this bracket of things, but some of these things are not acceptable. There is an agreement to rearrange a bit the criteria as they are set in the Council documents, though, because what we saw was that every criteria that could be considered as already covered by something like the ESG or the standard of the European approach, no matter how many times the experts put in the document that it means that if you are already evaluated, you don't need to check that, that doesn't seem to be clear enough, because we had consistently the feedback saying, but we already had an evaluation saying that we comply with CSGs. And they were interpreting it as us asking them to do it again, which is not the case. So maybe by reorganizing everything and setting it not as a criteria, but eligibility condition, for example, things will be clearer. A surprise, one of the biggest discussions we had with the representative of the different countries when we were negotiating the text was multilingualism. Multilingualism was a very scary criteria for many member states, intense discussions. Well, not anymore, that's fine. Now the most scary ones are the ones related to values. Even though we explained that we don't intend to measure values, we intend to check if there is a commitment to respect these values or not. And so the assessment is very easy, it's yes or no. But still, a lot of concern about that. Questions about inclusiveness and what does that mean, and access to services and how to do that more technically than actually in practice. The next meeting will take place on 23rd of January, and there will be another one toward the end of March, and then we should have a final text. So in a way, this workshop is important because you get a chance to influence our experts on the revised draft that we'll have to present by mid-January to all the members of the Policy Lab. So the first draft that you may have seen will be revised based on the feedback that we are receiving now from them and the feedback that we collect from other channels like yours. And that will serve as a basis to finalize something by spring. We know we'll never have unanimity on everything, but we'll have to close the discussion in spring to make sure everyone is ready by mid-2026. And then, very quickly, I just want to point out at very few things that are more policy-level things. So from now on until mid-2026, we are really focusing on making the Joint European degree available. As I said, a new draft will be presented by the end of January, then there will be a new draft by the end of March, and then there will be a final draft. From mid-2026 until 2028, we'll roll out the Joint European degree label, and then we'll focus on making it work, supporting quality assurance agencies to deliver it, supporting higher education institutions to get it. And until the end of 2028, because that's what the Council asked us to do, we have to evaluate the impact of the label, explore the feasibility of a real joint European degree as a legal framework, and facilitate experimentation. Something that clearly appears as well is that the momentum among national authorities is kind of declining now because we're entering into this implementation phase. It's a bit less exciting, but we need to keep the momentum alive if we want to make it work. And events like this help that very much, and I know your community will help it very, very much. But this is very important. Of course, narratives are always helped with some money. That's why there are call for proposals that are planned. There is one that was published yesterday for national authorities and quality assurance agencies to support them to get ready to deliver the joint European degree label. And there is another one coming on the 17th of December for higher education institutions to get their programs ready to receive the label and prepare even new ones. There will be another call of that dimension that will be also published in 2026 next year, possibly even another one in 2027. So through this rollout phase, we really aim to support higher education institutions to get the label. And then some archaeological findings almost. We always have the question of, yeah, but it should not go against the Bologna process, and it should not duplicate the Bologna process. And of course not. Of course not. We don't want to duplicate the Bologna process. But let's look at what the Bologna process said when it was launched. In the Sorbonne Declaration of 1998, it was told that joint diploma, that nowadays we'll call joint degrees, pilot initiative, dialogues would help to drive progressive harmonization of the overall framework of degrees and cycles. So already before the Bologna process was even formally launched, this was identified as one of the key priority for the process and one of the main driver for change. And then when you had the first Bologna communique, which is the Prague communique of 2001, it's interesting to see what people said 24 years ago. You had ministers calling for the development of modules, courses, curricula at all levels with European content, organization, or orientation, particularly those offered in partnership by institutions and leading to a recognized joint degree. That's the first Bologna communique. I think we are pretty much in line with that. And then you look 2 years later, what did they say? It's a longer one. But more interesting even, the Berlin communique. It talks about higher education institutions pooling their academic resources, cultural tradition, promote the development of integrated study programs and joint degrees at first, second, third level, and necessity to ensure a substantial period of study abroad in joint degree programs, mobility, as well as proper provision of linguistic diversity and language learning, multilingualism, so that students may achieve the full potential for European identity, citizenship, employability, and they agree to engage to remove legal obstacles to the establishment and recognition of such degrees, aka joint degrees. So we've been talking about it for 25 years in the Bologna context. Of course, some of the things on the last line, development of adequate quality assurance of integrated curricula leading to joint degree, has been done. That's called the European approach. That's why it is a precondition to get to the European degree. But all the rest, we haven't really done anything about it. So maybe after 25 years, now is the time. We have an opportunity to do it. We have an opportunity to do what we promised to do in the Bologna context a quarter of a century ago. So let's do it, and I'm sure that with your support we'll manage to make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these historical reminders. I will change the slide afterwards. I would like to follow up on the level of jointness. We saw that the criteria push for a certain level of jointness, not only the joint degree, but also joint policies, joint arrangements. And we know that many institutions also the ones involved in alliances have already engaging in that. So what is, for Jonathan, what is the European degree label really add? Having the European degree label working might require working through some sticking points that are not easy. What is the value actually of creating a European degree label? And is it worth the effort in your opinion?
Thank you for that. I think a lot of people are wondering about the level of ambition, the efforts we're going to have to put in. Just to get a sense of the room I'm talking to, just by a show of hands, who thinks what's currently set out is overly ambitious? No hands, good. I always say if we achieve everything we set out to, then maybe we weren't ambitious enough. We could have gone a little bit further. So a high level of ambition is a good thing. And when I hear people discuss the level of ambition that we're setting out, what we're trying to get to, I hear to a certain degree the question, why should we make it easier? Why are we doing all of this to work with each other in a certain way and be able to recognize each other's degrees and have a coherent process for that? My question is, why should it be so hard? As we just heard, these are all recognized degrees. This is all quality education. There's no reason that it should be this hard to work with each other. There's no reason not to have a way to collaborate with each other in a coherent, seamless way while remaining firmly rooted in our national contexts. This is a good ambition, and of course we're going to have to work towards that by working on the jointness of our offering. I was talking to Ulrike yesterday, who many of you I'm sure know. I often try to find people that I trust to run my points by, to get some feedback, and she appropriately reminded me that trust is what we're building by the jointness of the criteria, by truly being unified in our process, in our approach, in our education, in what we're offering to each other. We're thus building trust. We don't have to question things like, this is how I do things, how do you do things? Let's start from the basics. This is known. It becomes then a known quantity and quality using this label. To reach that level of trust, we do have to have true jointness in the offer, in the curriculum, and how we build what we're putting together. And as we saw, this was the ambition of the Bologna tools. This is what was originally envisioned. This is what we're aiming for. This jointness also means doing things together, defining things together from the start, so that we know exactly what we're doing, what we're aiming for, what we're putting into all of these programs. This is very important to recognize that from the beginning, everything will be joined. It should lead to a simpler, more comprehensive way forward, hopefully. This level of ambition, having something that's known as a quantity, as a quality, also allows us to recruit top students both inside and outside the EU for these programs. That should help the Union of Skills. It should help further the aims of the education itself that we're offering these students. It's not going to be obviously easy to accomplish this. As Laura said, there's going to be some sticking points in this process. It's not a given that we'll get to this end. So we're going to have to all push each other and internally with our ministries, QA agencies, and so on, to make sure that we are aligned. There's a lot of things that are happening right now with the rollouts of the European degree label. The ESG are being updated. This is going to affect the European process. The CTS user guide is being updated with some definitions being added. All of these things happening at once means that we really have to talk to each other jointly. We have to push each other a little bit to stay aligned and make sure that the process is on course so that we can reach the necessary jointness to really highlight the value in the label. And if we do keep this level of ambition, if we keep everything aligned, then this brings out the value that we need from the label to be able to work together seamlessly. Ultimately, if we're able to do this, it means that the students benefit. We're able to collaborate with each other seamlessly. We're able to offer each other some of our best to collaborate with each other. The students benefit, and we all benefit from having well-educated, engaged citizens. So.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And speaking of students, since this label is for them ultimately, we have here one former representative of the European Erasmus student. We know that one of the real drivers of value for students, not just because of the potential brand this could have, but also because the criteria promote student-centered learning, embedded mobility, inter-university campus, and a true European learning experience. So I have a question for Juan now. How do we make sure that these features are actually implemented and not just stated? And how do we engage students as impactful co-creators of these programs rather than just consultants? Please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Laura. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Since we are in this distinguished room, I think it's important to start with some more philosophical reflections, right? And then we'll move to the practical part. So, you know, when thinking about the value for students, the normal thing would be to start reflecting on the value for those students who will participate. But actually, I think that the key for the European degree is to take a different reference. To me personally, since we're talking about the level of ambition, European degree programs or programs leading to a European degree label should be those where we can see a clear value to the whole student population. So due to the level of joyness, due to the innovative pedagogies, due to the level of ambition, it is clearly visible that we are making an impact across institutions, and then we have a clear way to communicate this to the students. So in the end, in this whole review process, validation process, the ultimate question to answer will be, is this program going to create tangible value to the student population? If we would put it in EU language, in Brussels, that then Jamal needs to write in the documents, it would be, is this program truly going to be a lighthouse for deep transnational cooperation in higher education? And if the answer is yes, then this program should get a European degree label, right? Because to move to the part of the meaningful implementation, this question becomes really important. Why? Because if we want to involve students in the design of the programs, we need to wonder, how are we going to do this even before the program starts? And to me, the question there starts with the link that programs should have with a broader education vision or pedagogical strategy, especially in the context of alliances, right? We all know that these programs are not only for European university alliances. It has been said, and I think that's great. But at the same time, we know this is a very important tool for us alliances. And I think most of the people here come from alliances. And if there is one thing that we alliances should have, is a vision for why do we want education and what do we want education to be. And this is actually key, because it's not easy to engage the student population in a conversation about European degrees, because the students don't know what European degrees are and probably don't care. And I would say that's okay, because as long as they care about the type of education they want, we can engage them in the right conversation. I had a couple of nice experiences with this. Last week, there was an event also for FOREU4ALL with the student representatives of the alliances. For instance, in my alliance, we recently elected our student board. And in both cases, you know, like we had a little conversation, and I asked, do you know, what do you think European degrees? And they say, I don't know. But then we had really interesting conversations about what they expected from the universities and alliances, and we talked about their vision for mobility. We talk about their expectations when it comes to critical thinking in education. We talk about what they expect in terms of student services. So those elements can be consulted and discussed with the students, and they can inform the way that we shape our programs. So that's the starting point. The first way to engage students in the creation of our future European degrees is to engage them in the creation of the overarching educational vision for our alliances or for whatever coalition of universities that you're going to put together our programs. And then we move to the second part, which is the actual design of the program. And then, well, I think that when it comes to the nitty-gritty of that, we have two stages, right? There is the consultation stage that I believe that in an alliance should be constant. And here, there are different layers. I think we all share in this room the belief that democratic student representation is key and that we should have strong representatives to engage with. But maybe because of my my past and my background in the student movement, which is also broader than just the student unions themselves, I think we need to be creative, right? Because in the alliances, we are piloting a number of student engagement mechanisms that we can use to get input from the students. And asking precise questions is not the only way to see what students want. And engaging with the broader student population, such as associations or even bottom-up initiatives by students, is also a great way to see what the students want from their education. I'm going to give you our own example, what we are seeing in Ingenium. We recently had, probably like many of you, one of these calls for bottom-up initiatives for students, giving them a very broad framework. We want you to work on things like sustainability, like entrepreneurship, the broader values debate, which is so important for the alliances. And what we saw coming from those programs is a lot of concrete initiatives on what the students want when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to community building, when it comes to pedagogical development. So then it's up to us, right, as the staff leading the alliance, to make sure that those are integrated in the joint programs. So this could be, let's say, the first part of that student involvement. Then we go to the second one, which, as Jan-Mael said, is going to be super important in the European degree context, and also for me personally as a lawyer, a fascinating one, which is drafting a cooperation agreement. And I think that drafting a cooperation agreement presents great opportunities for creative legal writing. The first step, I think, is quite clear. I think probably everybody agrees, which is to involve students in all the different decision-making processes and bodies within a joint program, right? And probably you already do this. Many people here have way more experience than me, so I would love also then in the discussion to hear how you do this. Here, the way we are trying to do it with our first joint programs is very straightforward, the students being represented in the committees, in the processes, but then we're also trying something that maybe you have already tried, which is a two-stage process for the definition of all those joint policies and joint arrangements. Instead of just defining a complete joint policy before we start the program, what we're doing is to create the initial joint policies, let's say, in a very lean manner, including the key elements, subsidiarity, mutual recognition, but then defining the cooperation agreement that all those policies will be revised after the first year of implementation once we have the student representatives elected and creating a continuous improvement cycle. And I think this is an interesting way to do it. It's very easy to include this clause, and it immediately leads to this process in which, as soon as the students will be elected at the beginning of the year, we will tell them, look, as part of your mandate, we want you to evaluate these policies and to think how to then improve them. The second part, which goes back to this initial broader education strategy, is to make sure that there are clear links between the students that will represent their peers in the program and the broader student movement of the Alliance, right, the student board. Because that's also how we ensure this accountability that I spoke about before, ensuring that whatever happens in the program is then translated to the broader Alliance. And then also connected to this, representation is key, but I'm a firm believer that the students can also support with the implementation of programs, with peer-to-peer support in the mobility part, being part, of course, the student-centered learning dimension, so being actors in the programs, and I think the cooperation agreement is the first space to include this. Another key element, I think from what I have seen in the consultations that has been broadly discussed, alumni engagement being part of the improvement cycle. This is something that has been done in Erasmus Mundus for many years, but it's something that it's better fit if we include it already from the cooperation agreement, and from what I'm seeing, it fits really well there. So these are some of the initial ideas on how to do it practically. What is clear is that with the cooperation agreement, we have a great opportunity to reinforce jointness from the very beginning with student engagement. So then, how to include these things in the guidelines, right? Like, what would I suggest? Well, the first thing that I would suggest is that as part of this policy lab, we have a very nice template cooperation agreement. We've been talking about this for some time. This will really help alliances and groups of universities in general, and even if not all the programs lead to the European degree label, that's okay, because people will be gradually, advancing in that direction. And then other things that I believe would be important to have in the guidelines, this collaboration with student structures to ensure quality mobility, also this idea of programs being linked to a broader educational strategy, which I think is absolutely key, accountability mechanisms towards the Alliance, right, in the sense that this is how you can prove that the program is contributing. For instance, I'm thinking about something we want to do would be annual meetings with the student board to explain how the program is evolving and which lessons are we learning to improve the pedagogical offer of our Alliance. And with these kind of things, I think the guidelines will be already way more helpful to ingrain student involvement. My general reflection is that never in the history of public policy, a minimum common denominator approach has led to successful outcomes. What has led to successful outcomes is a policy of FOMO, fear of missing out. When something is well designed, is sexy, and is shiny, people see it and they want to move towards that. So it's better to have an ambitious instrument that we can learn from, something that we can see, that we can take inspiration from, rather than go for something that everybody can have and doesn't really lead to any transformation. This is how we can use the label to move towards a real European degree that then removes the barriers that we face. So yeah, that would be it, and looking forward to the conversation later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Juan. Again, speaking about level of ambition, there is also a very sticky point in the criteria which makes some people nervous, which is the labor market relevance. And one of the criteria of the European degree label refers to the relevance of this labor market and collaboration with external stakeholders. At the same time, we know that many universities fear that aligning too closely with labor market needs could narrow their mission or undermine academic autonomy. So I have a question for Laura now. From your perspective and your work in policy experimentation projects, how can guidelines help balance these two dimensions, responsiveness to Europe's skills agenda on one hand, and the university's broader mission from critical creative thinkers and others?
Okay, thank you, Laura. Thank you for the invitation to be here. And I don't know whether the gentlemen between us realize that they're in a Laura sandwich. Anyway, the criteria certainly aim to link universities more closely to Europe's skills needs. But at the same time, they also aim to firmly safeguard the institutional autonomy and the academic freedom that are essential for universities' broader societal mission. So how can this be achieved through the operational guide and putting the criteria into practice? Well, mainly through this dual focus on transversal skills and a framework that respects universities' control over content and pedagogy. Integrating skills such as those needed for the green and digital transitions while preserving critical thinking, for example. So how can this happen? How can we ensure that universities don't become mere training providers? Well, if we look a little more closely at criteria B2, which is the one that Laura referred to, about opportunities for learning beyond academia and employability, we can see that criteria involves collaboration with industry and community stakeholders. It involves collaboration with them at the beginning of the process to shape the design and the implementation of programs, but also offers the possibility of internships, secondments, placements, volunteer opportunities, work-based learning, service learning, challenge-based approaches in teaching. These are all suggested ways of collaborating with industry and ensuring that the programs are providing graduates with the skills that they need. But it's also, I think, very important to notice the wording of the criteria, because it says that all this will be tailored to the nature and circumstances of the joint program. And to me, that is a vital message. It's not saying that everybody has to do things the same way. It's saying we want you to head in this direction to show that that you're thinking about these things, but adapting it, obviously, to the nature of your program. It won't be the same for a program in engineering as it will for a program in humanities. But they still both need to take these into account to the degree that is necessary for the nature and circumstances of that joint program. And we can see this in other criteria, B3 on digitalization. It also states tailored to the nature and circumstances of the joint program. In B1, interdisciplinarity and research-based learning. Now, this is not going to require full interdisciplinarity, but it will ask that there is at least one structural opportunity for students to engage in an interdisciplinary or research-based learning experience. And again, tailored to the needs of the program. Of course, another relevant criteria here is A5, graduate tracking. It's already been mentioned by Juan. And the need to use that information to inform the program, to improve alignment with employability and the needs of industry. This is nothing new. This is already included in other European standards, but we are reminded that it is necessary in a joint European program that wants to have the label to show that you are listening to the graduates that come through your program and what they say is missing for them to be more employable and for them to do their job well. So in general, the criteria are framed as quality standards and focused on what a graduate achieves, on the learning outcomes and the competencies that they will get from following the program, rather than on dictating curricular choices or pedagogical methods. And recognizing the diversity of learning environments across partner institutions, which is one of the added values and the richness that we can get from these joint programs, combining these different learning environments in the different partners. But how else is academic autonomy safeguarded? The European degree, the joint European degree label as a concept and its criteria has a foundation in core values. It is founded on the horizontal principles of subsidiarity, institutional autonomy, and academic freedom. And we can see that reflected in criteria B4 on values, where to be awarded the label, the program has to show that the program itself, the institutions that are involved in the program, adhere to the values of the European higher education area and to European values. But also, and this is not something that some people like to hear, but it is the truth, participation in the label is voluntary. Nobody is obliged to apply for it. And universities are not going to be forced to align with criteria that contradict their institutional mission. As simple as that.
As simple as that.
Also, the criteria and the way that they are going to be implemented encourages a move, as we heard from Jan Mael earlier, a move towards the institutional approach for quality assurance, which gives higher education institutions slightly more flexible control over the programs and facilitates transnational cooperation while still adhering to European standards. So to summarize, what we are working towards is an approach that preserves the university's primary responsibility for the design and delivery of their programs within the framework of the criteria. And I go back to finish to that phrase that is in so many of the criteria, tailored to the nature and circumstances of the joint program.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you for mentioning criterion B4 so that I can follow up on my question for Jan Mael about the European values. Existing programs already embed in some way the European values. So what does this criterion make the European degree more European than what we already have? And how can the guidelines support institutions in showing that these values are truly embedded and not just declared?
Yeah, that's a tough question. The story behind the value criteria is actually an interesting one. At the beginning, when we started the whole process with pilot projects, we asked higher education institutions to reflect on what criteria would make sense to them to have in the joint European degree. And I must say that values were not really among the suggestions of the Commission to work on, but it came from the pilot project that was something they wanted to see reflected among the criteria. And that's something that we took in the proposal, therefore, that was sent to the member states. During the negotiations with the different countries on agreeing on the final list of criteria, I wasn't sure that the criteria will stay until the very end. There were a lot of talk about how to modify it, maybe delete it, maybe change the wording. In the end, it includes more values than in the initial proposals. Now it talks about the Bologna process values, and it talks about the values of the European Union defined by the treaty, and other things like democratic citizenship and so on. So quite a lot of values indeed. But the criteria also talk about the fact that it's a commitment that is expected from the institutions. And I think the role of this criteria is not really to start auditing every institution to see how they respect all these different values one by one and tell them how they should do that. I think the goal is mostly to protect the program that will get the label from being misused, or the label from misuses. You know, we always say that the minimum is 2 higher education institutions from 2 EU countries. I don't think we have really higher education institutions in EU countries that fundamentally disrespect these values today. But it's also open to non-EU higher education institutions. And you could see in the negotiation that some were thinking of possible cooperation with countries that you could tell definitely they do not respect these values very, very obviously. So this criteria is there mostly to make sure that such cooperation don't get to be called European degrees when they fundamentally disrespect these values. If you start thinking of, for example, building a joint program with Minsk University, well, I'm sorry, but they don't deserve this label, because we don't want to have cooperation with universities where students are jailed if they dare raising their opinion. And that's simple as that. It's a measure to protect the integrity of the concept of the label. It has to be strong enough so there is a guarantee that the label can be withdrawn in case there is a very big, obvious problem. But it shouldn't be a way to start questioning too much what is well established in EU countries and in our higher education institutions where, of course, these values are today respected.
Thanks a lot. Very nice way to end the conversation. I had another question, but first I would like to open the floor to you. Do you have any questions for us, for the panelists? And please don't be shy. If I can speak in public, everybody can. Yes, it's there. Can you present yourself?
Mario, part of the QA topical group, but formerly member of one of the 6 pilot projects. My question is actually about that. It's maybe for Jan-Mael, or maybe for Laura as member of the Policy Lab. You know, in one of the 6 the other one, Laura, not Laura. One of the 6 pilot projects, in its conclusions, proposed to extend the scope of the European degree label to smaller units of learning, so to non-degree pathways or micro-credential, or whatever we want to call them. Is this idea or possibility still on the table, maybe in connection with other initiative from the Commission, like the Union of Skills?
That's a question I received a lot in the last years. What I will say is that it's not in scope of what the Policy Lab is working on now. It didn't come up in the discussion with the countries as something they want necessarily to work on, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. There are different things. We shouldn't try to put everything under this concept of joint European degree. First, I would like to remind that in the Commission proposal, we are talking about a European degree, and the member states said, no, a joint European degree. We only want it for joint programs. That was a very clear message from them. Joint programs, joint degrees, not single national programs, single national degrees. That's something to reassure them that they wanted to make sure of. So they're trying to put micro-credential in there would be very tricky because also the criteria are not fit for purpose there. But you have another text at EU level. You have the European approach to micro-credentials. You have a list of standards. You have a list of principles. There are 10. They can be used as criteria to create a label for micro-credentials. You can call them European micro-credentials. That's very easy to do, actually. Now, politically, there is not much room to propose this now, but it doesn't mean it cannot come up from the ground as well. What we are doing now is we're supporting national authorities to develop ecosystems that are favorable to micro-credentials. And I think this initiative could also come from institutions or national authorities that would decide, hey, you know what, we will create a label for micro-credentials that are aligned with the European approach for micro-credentials, and we'll call them European micro-credentials, and we will absolutely support it. And that can be another way to get there.
Thank you.
Another mic came to the rescue.
This is better? All right. So I was saying good morning, everyone, and thank you for your interesting insights. My name is Lotte. I work at Ghent University, so Enlight Alliance. I have a more technical question, if I may, on the terminology, either for Jan Mael or Laura, whomever wants to reply. So I think one of the most fundamental criteria in the list is the one leading to the awarding of a joint degree, which is, I would argue, the proper reflection of a joint program, one joint degree. But I'm still wondering, and there is still a lot of debate on how to interpret this joint degree. Are we talking about a joint degree in the sense of one single document that all partner institutions award or co-deliver, I would say? Or are we talking about the degree in the sense of a single qualification that all partners need to co-award? Because that's a big difference, I think. Thank you.
So we are using the definition of the Bologna process, joint degree, one single document recognized as the award of the joint program nationally. So it's a joint document, it's one single document, it has legal value. It doesn't mean you need to have one single title. I assume it could have different qualifications on it. even though, yeah, I mean, that would be a bit odd, but why not? I mean, that's actually a question I received 2 days ago from Estonia. Can it has more titles than just one and more qualifications? Because one of the good news is that because of this, they are actually considering revising the legislation to allow it, finally. So they need to know what to do and ask for advice. So we are talking about really a joint degree. We saw that question coming up in the policy lab, including from representative of higher education institutions asking, yeah, but could we interpret it as multiple degrees is a joint degree? And we're like, no. We need to have clear definitions aligned with the Bologna process definitions. So we say joint degree, It doesn't mean that we can create extra flexibility and say, yeah, this joint degree requirements applies only to EU partners, for example, because, okay, we don't want to forbid another degree to be awarded by a Japanese university on the side. I mean, that's fine. In the end, what matters is that European partners can work together. But that's something we'll be quite inflexible about on the principle. But looking more into the detail of implementation, there could be room for these kind of things.
If I can just add to that, I think it'll be interesting to see the take-up from the call that was launched on the 3rd of December for ministries and agencies, and see, you know, how many of them are going to roll up their sleeves and start working, and what ideas they come up with through those through their projects, and what changes we're going to see happening across the different countries.
Thank you, Lara. She's doing my job much better than I do. And please help us disseminate the information that they have an opportunity to get support to do that, and that we want to have as many projects as possible within this goal.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Catherine from the University of Liège in Belgium, within the Alliance Unique. Since we're addressing a technical question, my job is mainly to address these kind of issues dealt by technical questions. Does the Commission or whatever stakeholder plan to have workshops or guidelines for ministries to update their templates for issuing joint degree? Because, for instance, in my legislation, there's a ministerial decree that helps institutions draft joint degrees. Obviously, it's a template for joint Belgian degrees between Belgian French-speaking institutions. It's not even for Belgium, as you all know. And when I read this template, it doesn't give answers when we are trying to draft a joint degree within an international partnership. So until now, we have already 3. We are involved in 3 joint degree, really joint degree, 1 joint single paper, and they have nothing to do one with the other, and they are a little bit messy, maybe. So I've already written to the ministry to say, will there be an update? But maybe they would need some help from up with some guidelines to allow some flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. It's funny, we got the question from a Belgian representative not so long ago if the concept of a joint European degree could also apply to a joint degree between a French-speaking Belgian university and a Flemish-speaking. It was you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Online, but it was me.
And I'm sorry I said no.
No, I know.
But I guess that's where the question comes from. And what we have planned to do is that now we are doing a bit of work in parallel, desk research work, together with consultants from PPMI and other experts, including Belgian Flemish experts, on mapping everything that is problematic in different national legislations when you want to create a joint program leading to a joint degree. So, because we know that ministries need help to identify these things, because sometimes they're just not aware that this is problematic in that context. So we are trying to map everything in every national context. In Belgium context, it means in Wallonia and in Flanders. All the things, including the award of a joint degree. And based on that, what we want to do is to give ministries the opportunity to have a look at all this mapping and have a conversation with them on what they would eventually consider modifying, try to help them identify solutions that they will feel comfortable with. The idea of a common template for joint degrees, I mean, I think the idea makes sense, except that I'm not sure it would be welcome as a commission thing, going to ministry saying that's how your degree should look like. There's so much symbolism there that it's very, national authorities tend to be quite defensive immediately about it, when the intention is just to provide some help. But what we can do is maybe come up with recommendations, what as a minimum this joint degree should include as pieces of information that is necessary to ensure that it can be recognized, that it's legally valid. And then you know that all the rest that is not among these minimum requirements is a bit you adding extra stuff to it. So that could be a way. And then there's another opportunity I always think about, is that now when we're thinking of joint degrees and diplomas, we're always thinking the paper diploma. It's beautiful, it has nice seals, signatures, and so on. But that's not really the future. In the future, this diploma will be digital, most likely. And that's where there is actually a great opportunity now. Because, you know, now we are trying to fix things that have developed over hundreds of years and taken different shapes. And we're trying to find a way to combine them now. But in the digital world, we actually have an opportunity to come up with a model now that everyone can use from the start, and that can seamlessly work across borders. So there we're working with the colleagues with the digital credentials infrastructure, with digital standards, and we want to provide countries with a model. You want to issue diplomas digitally, you want to issue including joint diploma digitally. This is a model you can use tomorrow if you want. It's free. You can copy it, you can include it in your national platform, whatever you want. And from there, maybe we have a chance to actually make these obstacles disappear in the digital world.
And I also know that Juan would like to intervene.
Yeah, something related to what Lotte mentioned before, and a comment that Jamail made, because this is actually really important, the part on the qualifications. And what I would say is that it's not only possible or just like something that could happen that leads to more than one qualification. It's actually something desirable that we should try to have. Why? One of the biggest problems we have in Europe, as you know, is that our single market for services is not fully integrated, and still a lot of people face barriers, you know, like to practice their professions outside of their own country. A lot of this is connected indeed to the lack of recognition of professional qualifications. So a great potential spillover effect of what we are doing is indeed that we start to have first more joint programs that then lead to 2 qualifications, but then why not? Imagine the context of alliances, that even without having all the universities involved as degree awarding institutions, they immediately lead to qualifications across all the alliance. So then you would immediately imagine the case of law, right? To become a lawyer in Spain, I need to have my master's, this only happens in Spain, and still I face barriers to practice law in any other European country. So this type of joint programs could immediately lead to a recognition of the qualification in every country, and this would be incredible progress towards a real single market for services. So these are the type of innovative solutions that we need to really move these programs to the next step. Of course, then there are many legal things to do there, but to be honest, the fact that a program is linked to an NQF, it really depends on the country accepting it, because the framework is there. In each national qualifications framework, you will have what is needed for that. We just need the ministry to accept that program. So it's very good. Thank you, Lotte, for that great question, because I think it initiates a reflection what are the next steps to really make these programs not only about the academic side, but the link to the professional world. And it can be a powerful element because we have the narrative behind it. You have the Letta report, we have the Draghi report, and this is really, really important. It's one of the biggest problems we have in our economy. So I just wanted to make that little note. Sorry for jumping in.
Yes, I've been given permission to jump in again. I wanted just to go back to the digital qualifications that were mentioned. And I think that it's important at this stage that in countries where the ministries are starting to consider this and work on it, that they are made aware that they need to think about joint programs when they are designing the digital framework that they're going to use in their country to award degree programs, because it would be very sad if we went through the same issues with digital certifications as we are with paper ones. That is, that they originally were not designed for joint programs, and therefore there are issues that make it very difficult. So let's try and make sure, and that is something that depends on all of you in dialogues within your national contexts, to make sure that these elements are thought of and are part of the discussion when the changeover is made to digital certifications.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Jose Camposano from Eureka Alliance. Also building on top of what was commented before on the mapping, we consider this is extremely useful to do the mapping of barriers and challenges to guide and inform national authorities. In our alliance, we have actually been following a similar exercise that was done as part of these Erasmus Plus experimentation projects, where there was already a big table of mapping. But what we have realized is that it was still missing some sort of dimension, because it's not only about the legislation based on the geographical area, but in the cases of our alliance, for instance, all of our partners are either universities of applied sciences or polytechnic institutes. And in Finland, where I'm based, there are 2 different laws for universities that do fundamental research and universities that do that are working in applied sciences. So as a question or maybe a feedback in this mapping exercise and informing national authorities, are you also considering these different angles? Because we're not just talking about equivalent degrees on levels, EQF level 6, 7, 8, but we're also talking about different legislation in many cases.
We are definitely going to take that into account. The idea is to, basically expand what was done in the pilot project, who proved to be extremely useful. At first, I was afraid when we published the outcome of the pilot project that the ministries will think we are pointing finger, and they would take it the wrong way. But actually, only a couple of them took it that way, and most of them were actually found it very useful, because again, it's a job they don't have to do, that was done for them. Then they helped us to point to say, yeah, but I actually have an exception to that point in my legislation, they're just not aware about it. And sometimes it's just a problem of miscommunication between the ministry and their higher education institutions. Sometimes it's institutional practice as well. So there are many different elements to take into account. And point taken, I think for Finland, we definitely have to keep that in mind when we draft the Finnish mapping, which we haven't started yet. But anyway, I think this mapping, we want to have several eyes to look at those before we are ready to even publish it. It's really a way to engage conversation with you as practitioners, with quality assurance agencies, and mostly with ministries at the end to try to find solutions together.
Thank you. We take 2 more questions, one here and one here, and then 3. Okay.
So I'm Levi Gorsen-Nesbakk from Nord University in Norway and a part of the CEU Alliance. So the question is about collaboration. So of course the joint degrees are founded on this, but can you say a little bit more about the amount of collaboration and what type of collaboration would it kind of take to get your logo on the diploma, so to say, because of course you may be a part of the design of the joint degree, you may be a part of the co-teaching, but of course you could also be hosting students, so you can do many different things. And what would you regard as the kind of minimum type of collaboration or participation to say that, okay, we are a part of this joint degree, and we will therefore have the logo on the diploma?
Well, I would say that that depends on the consortium itself. It's up to the joint program, all the institutions that provide the joint program, to decide when they consider that a partner has earned its laurels, if you like, and can be included in the as one of the institutions appearing on the final degree. The consortium itself may decide it's only institutions that take part in the teaching, or it's only, and that's something that they have to agree on in the joint program. That isn't going to be, as far as I know, that is not going to be mandated. It is up to the institution. There are also currently institutions that are not happy to, or are not allowed to, from their internal legislation, to put their name on a degree if students haven't spent time physically in their institution or for various other reasons. So those elements may also mean that some institutions can't appear on the degree because they haven't had the level of participation that they themselves require for that. But basically, the consortium needs to decide on that.
Yeah, we don't want to go into the same direction as some legislation that may say you need to provide 30% of the teaching, or you need to host 50% of. We don't want to go there. So as long as the consortium is comfortable counting you as one full partner, as long as you're comfortable putting your name on the degree, I'm comfortable with it.
Hello, my name is Paula. I came from Portugal, Universidade Europeia, representing Challenge EU. I would like to come a little bit back and ask you about the burden. Nowadays, we are applying for Erasmus+, or Madame Curie in the alliances. We are applying for European approach, and now we are trying to apply to the European. It's a big burden because we have to always comply with another focus point, with values, with something additional. I was trying to ask you if, when you are talking about mapping, if we can struggle to map what we will already do to apply to the different programs in general, Madame Curie, European approach, and this additional one, because it's a big burden. And I'm a lawyer, also like Juan. I understand what we are saying, but I'm doing it in practice every day. And we are always trying to get a little bit longer, harder. We are walking in a difficult line. So please take this in account and help us to progress. Thank you very much.
Can I react? Well, sorry, I just want to say, I think it's a really important comment, but what I think is super important for the European degree label, then Jamael can make the usual excuses that the Commission needs to make, but is to differentiate between funding instruments and policy instruments. I think this is absolutely key. Like, even though there might be funding linked to it, I think the whole European degree process should really be, just like the European approach is a quality assurance process, the European degree should be about quality, about improving the programs. And then I think there's another very important debate that we should actually push, which is, does it make sense, the current application processes that we go through at the European level? Is this helping anyone? That we fill 40 pages of quality things that then ChatGPT can fill? But to me, these debates are really different, so I just wanted to point that out. Sorry, Amal.
No, very well said. Something I can say about backpack in the process. When we started working on the concept, what can we ask in order to get to this joint European degree? The starting point was to go from Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters, what are we asking? Marie Skłodowska-Curie Joint Doctorate, what are we asking? We take that starting basis. We make sure it's the same, it's compatible, and of course, Bologna tools. And I think that was one of the key messages from the pilot project as well. If you already have an Erasmus Mundus program, you're probably already there for the label. And the same with Maria Skłodowska-Curie joint doctorate. You're most probably already there. And then it can inform, of course, you now in a phase, you know, there will be a new Erasmus Plus program in hopefully a couple of years. And there we have to see what's our approach toward these funding instruments and how can we make sure that this works all in synergy with another and reduce the burden. That I understand, I don't downplay it, it's real. It's real. The application burden, I think anyway, artificial intelligence will lead the Commission to rethink the way applications are made, assessments are made of everything. But also what we want to pass as a message is that we have to do our work in terms of burden, that's clear, for the funding instruments. But for the legal side of things, member states have to do some work to ease the burden on you as well. You should be able to do these things in a much easier way than today, because it's just not normal that it's so hard to do this. And that's a bit the intention behind this policy side, a policy instrument, policy side of things, that we want to help removing the burden, even though I know it doesn't look like it with adding a new initiative. But if we don't do anything, the burden is not going to disappear. So unfortunately, that the only way to ease the burden is to help countries to remove it with an initiative.
I'm Ramon Martinez, Technical University of Madrid, ELISA Alliance. I'm sorry, first of all, for delaying the coffee break in 1 minute. I'm going to be very fast. So the first point is on the comment of Juan about the spillover effect of making joint degrees be recognized at the different countries as professional qualifications. This is something very, very important that we evaluated in one of the policy experimentation projects. And what I would suggest on the first side is that, considering that we are talking about understanding the guidelines, I'm sorry, I'm one of the few people that have not had access to the first draft. I'm sorry for that. But maybe it would be interesting to have like some clear definitions on what we are talking about when we say national qualification framework. Are we talking about academic qualification, professional qualifications, both? Because depending on how you read it, there could be like some, let's say, bottlenecks from different countries to say, okay, I'm not going to accept that a joint degree will allow my students to be engineers in my country. And the second point on this set of definitions is that I would like to, fortunately, all the people that are here, which regularly meet in different European degree forums and events, so we understand more or less what we are talking about. But people that will design joint programs probably will not have the background that we have. So in the case, for example, of joint PhDs, there is like 100 definitions that you might find not in different countries, but in different universities. So sometimes a joint PhD is considered like a co-tutel. Sometimes you need to have a single diploma signed by the two universities. So it's very, very important to have very clear definitions before talking about the guidelines. Thank you very much.
If I could answer there, the guidelines are, part of the guidelines is a glossary of definitions as the terms are used in the guidelines, because we are well aware of these terminological differences in different countries, but as you say, even within different institutions. So that is one of the things that is already well underway, a glossary. Okay.
And the goal is to translate these guidelines in different national languages, so there's no mistranslation from English to the national language, because that's also something that happens.
Can I actually, Laura, just very quickly, can I just ask a question, just curiosity? Could those of you who have had access to the first version of the operational guide, just raise your hands, just out of curiosity to see how far spread it's got. Who has seen the first version of the operational guide?
Not bad.
About a third of the room, I would say.
More,
yeah? It's just interesting to see.
We are feeling very jealous, the rest. So it's like, who can we contact?
Okay, wrap-up was planned, but I guess we will have it at the end of today. I don't want to take more minutes of your coffee break, but I will take 1 more minute for a group picture. Can you guide us on how we do that? Okay, so just come here next to the to the table. And thanks to the panelists and to you.
Should we stay? Like Donald Trump style, everybody standing and us sitting.
The three of us are wearing navy jackets.
Yes, true, true,
Looks
true.
like a uniform.
But it was nice, engaging, people had really interesting comments and questions. And it's nice to have a panel.
Everybody needs to be in the picture very quickly.
Solving world problems. A mí se me encantó porque eso ya te cambia la
Okay, we are going to start now, so please take your seat. Thanks. So I hope you enjoyed the coffee or the line to the coffee, whatever. I hope you had good conversations. The next session is about quality assurance perspectives. What does compliance look like, quality assurance challenges and opportunity? In this session, we will focus on existing conditions. But for the moderation of this session, I will leave the floor to Alexander With. He is Secretary General of the EU Peace Alliance. He coordinates the EU-funded project under the European Universities Initiatives, including the management and facilitation of all project activities between the various bodies and expert teams. He guides the activities and decision-making processes of the Alliance itself, but beyond the project as well, and he represents the Alliance externally, including in the community of practice FOREU4ALL. Prior to the EU Peace, he first concentrated on quality assurance in higher education, first in policy at the RASCE, starting in 2011, and then at the Quality Assurance Agencies, ACAS. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. As she said, I do have a background in quality assurance as well, but I will not speak. The colleagues that you see on the screen will speak, so I would like to invite them to join me. First, we have Antonella Forlino. She is a professor of biochemistry at the University of Pavia, until 2025 vice rector as well for internationalization, and as such, she coordinates the activities of the EC2U Alliance at our university. And if I'm not wrong, EC2U has 3 joint programs. Yes. So we will learn from that perspective as well. And Antonella was also involved in the EDA-FISH pilot project in the past. Then we have Susanne Lippold. Susanne Lippold is from Ruhr University of Bochum, part of the UNIQUE Alliance. She's senior consultant for learning and teaching and assistant to the virus sector for academic affairs. That means that she works on study program development, including on accreditation matters. And UNIQUE has 2 joint programs that are already launched and 3 that are very soon to be launched as well. And thanks again to Susanne for stepping in on short notice. Dorothy Kelly could have been with us, but had to excuse herself on short notice. So the institutional perspective and then the quality assurance agency perspective, we have Patrick van den Bos, director of FOREU4ALL, which is the quality assurance agency of Flanders. It concentrates on program evaluation, including on the European approach. And Patrick is also vice president of ENQUA, the Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, which is shaping the Bologna process, the ESG revision, and much more. And last but not least, we have Dagmar Proveen from NVAO, the accreditation organization of Netherlands and Flanders. Dagmar concentrates on institutional and program assessments in Flanders, in Luxembourg, but also European approach procedures. He conducted also a pilot procedure under the UNIQUE project, which looked at institutional evaluation of alliances. Welcome. So as we did earlier today, we will start with brief inputs, and then we will have good 30 minutes for discussions with you. We will go beyond 12:05, but that should be fine as well. So maybe first, Antonella, can you maybe share with us some good practices that you've come across for the development of joint programs that can help for the European degree label? And also some challenges if you encountered them.
Sure. So thank you very much for this great opportunity. When I was asked to share with you best practice as challenging, I just thought, well, that's a challenge per se, meaning that I was involved since the beginning as a coordinator of the master task force in our alliance to set up the basis for joint program. And honestly, at that time, and we are not talking about 10 years ago, but just 4 or 5 years ago, there was really big confusion on how to move and what to do, what was the best approach. And we start with, honestly, hours of online meeting to try to find out how we can find common basis. So after a while, being a pragmatic person, we realized that we need to be pragmatic. So what I think I like to share with you are some of the issues that we set up early on, talking about 2021. So the relevance of something that was already mentioned in the previous panel, to have a mapping of legal and quality assurance in the different partners of the consortium. This is a must. It was a must for us because each different nation has a different legal requirement, accreditation procedure, recognition rules. And after a couple of months of discussion ending up in nothing, we realized that that was a really important issue to start with. Because in this way, we could at least know where were the barriers. And although we probably did not really succeed in overcome all of them, because we did not succeed up to now to use the European approach for building up a joint program, we were able to solve some of the issues, exchange our need with accreditation agency and with the ministry, and being able overall to activate the joint program. The other important thing that also I'd like to share is the need to have a shared quality benchmark. This is a must. It's really important to have a single document, self-assessment document in terms of quality assurance, complying with the ESG and with the European approach rules. But this is the only way to have one document and not 5, 6, 8, 9 documents at the national level, which again, it will simplify when you have to build up a joint program. And then also to have a strong and formalized governance, meaning it is important to identify who is doing what, who is responsible for what, starting from the curriculum design, the learning outcome, but also the assessment of the students, but also who is releasing the diploma, but also who is responsible for the funding for the mobility path within the master. And this was actually something that we took seriously in consideration, meaning it's very important to have a good consortium agreement in place. In order to avoid to have to make the small changes with a lot of amendment later on. And I'm saying that because we went through that, of course. And then another issue is to have clear in mind what is the program level of joint master and what is the institutional level. There are something that sometimes we miss these two levels, but it needs to be really separated, like the learning outcome, the curriculum, the student support, from, that is program level, from what is institutional. The institution has to provide the staff, the student facility, the funding, and it's very important to have to take into consideration both levels, but if you want to, in only one group, face the two issues, then you will get in trouble. And we start from try to have all the levels mixed together. It was a mess. Then we realize how it's important to separate. Not that the two levels doesn't need to talk, because they need to talk, but they need to work separately, in my view, and then have a moment of discussion when it comes to finalize the joint program per se. I found very important to use pilot experiments. So in EC2U, we activate 3 joint master, piloting different approaches to create a jointness. And we took into serious relevance we track what was the outcome after the first 2 years from the academic point of view and for the students. And this allow us to implement our master, and even now we are in process to activate the 4th one. And of course, the 4th one was much easier to build up with respect to the first 3. And for the last one, we also try to use the European approach, because in the meantime, and I will come back in a bit later on that, also in Italy, we are allowed to use the European approach, and we will lead this accreditation process. The other 2, let's say, correlated things are the relevance to know very well the research level of the institution involved in the joint master and the labor market need in the different country. Because you really want to have a joint master of high quality, but quality in a broad view, in order to satisfy not only the, let's say, educational part, but overall the formation of the student and overall the answer to the requirement of the nation per se. Then when it comes to the challenging, I have a lot of them. But the first one that I want to underline is the so highly mentioned European approach. The European approach was supposed to simplify everything. And it may do so in the future. I know that is in place since 2015, but there is really limited implementation. So very limited countries now are able to follow the European approach, accept the European approach, or activate accreditation throughout the European approach. Things are changing, I think, thanks to the momentum that we are all living. But still, most part of the country, they are in the limbo. So it will be really nice to have a comment maybe from Jean-Maël on what we do if the European approach cannot be applied because one of our partner countries is not recognizing or is not willing to accept it. At the moment, we are lucky. For the next joint master, we have the green light from all of them, but still, our national agency do not have experience. So what is missing is some specific guidelines, some specific template document, something that can guide us in the process. And I think that we really need to simplify stuff, otherwise it will be really difficult for the academics to be really engaged in activate the joint master, which I think are anyhow really important. There is a difficulty in harmonization because if you don't use the European approach, you go to national accreditation and all have different rules, different times. And the times, it seems trivial, but it's really relevant because when you have to provide document with different timeline frame, then you postpone the activation of your master. And then the last point I want to make is the cost for the European approach, which is also a challenge. We know that depending on the country that is using the European approach, you may be charged a different amount of money. And this is a personal concern. Will this be or create a skew on the type on the countries that will be asked more to be responsible for the European approach, meaning the one where it costs less, they will have more requests with respect to the other one, and will this be accepted by all the countries? And overall, after the alliance project will end, or for the universities that are not in alliance, who will actually take care about the cost? That's also another issue that I think can be critical and challenging in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonella. We mentioned already the mapping at the start. So, Susanne, are there strategies or practices you think that can help in the alignment of quality assurance processes towards the European degree label?
I try. Thank you for giving UNIC the opportunity to share our experience in the development process of 2 joint degrees with our 8 international partners. And these are joint degrees where all partners sign one document, which is really a challenge also in the signing process, as you have to send the document around Europe. And we also have a partner from Turkey, so we have also sent it to Turkey. I would be a little bit more general in what I will explain you later on, and I will focus on the development process, and the alignment of QA is for me a part of the development process of the curriculum. I will start with a kind of a provocative statement saying that true joint degrees should fulfill the criteria of the European degree label, except 2 or 3 little things by now. But I think the European degree label is an additional push to implement really joint degree programs and not being or having a kind of a okay, those 4 partners are delivering a joint degree, and those 2 partners have additional double degrees as they are not willing or not allowed to award a joint degree. Joint degree programs that wish to apply for the label are in no way different than other joint programs. The label is a symbol that the requirements for a joint program have been implemented jointly, which is really important. You know that the similar thing has to be done when you are applying for an accreditation by the European approach. So this is nothing else. And the basis of all QA models, or the QA models you will create for your joint degree, are the European standards and guidelines. And in this question, it is totally irrelevant whether a partner uses the Plan, Do, Check, Act model or the EFQM model or whatever else is running through Europe with respect to quality assurance models. So for me, not the model is the crucial question, but the how-to. What I always been propagating is saying the development process has to be a holistic one. You have to include all parts in the development, also the tiny bits like admission. What are the necessary requirements, informal things, for admission at EU universities or at the partner universities, or in the decision-making processes at the partner universities of a joint degree. So that's why I'm always saying the development process cannot be reduced to the development of the study plan and the mobility scheme. We have to look at all things. Also, and that's also why I'm saying you have to include all stakeholders of the university. That does not mean, that means not only the senior lecturers who are developing the curriculum or the study plan. You have to include the students, the administrative staff who is familiar with with all legal aspects. You have to include the QA people. You have to include persons from the admission office or from the examination office in order to get the information before you have set up a study plan, and then the administrative staff is coming, oh no, that doesn't work. And that's really not good. So we started in UNIC to find out nearly everything about legal and administrative requirements, and my colleague Catherine can say that was really a tough job. We've met every twice a week in order to elaborate what are our key points. We also talk about QA issues at the beginning, what is necessary at the partner universities. And this information we have incorporated in the development process and also in the discussion of the governance structure. And governance structure is also a key issue in talking about aligning quality assurance in your joint degrees. So regarding QA issues, I would suggest that the first step could be to identify similarities and differences in the tools and processes at the partner universities. Since the label does not prescribe a specific way of conducting QA, but it requires a binding QA agreed by all partners, you do not have to invent the wheel new. So you can look what the partners have, what is good, what is working for your consortium, and you have at another step agree on your aims for the QA. If you would like to have a shared responsibility for QA, saying that some partners are doing QA for the educational offers, the other doing for, I don't know, and you have some umbrella tools in place for overall things you would to monitor in your joint degree program, or you decide on having a complete new QA. So that's the question you should talk to your, talk or agree with your partners. Then, or in the process, you have to discuss this as well with the administrative staff at the universities conducting those tasks, so that they know what you are doing, that they know the partners at the other university, they are in contact with them, and they can build some trust with the other partners. Small note, clarifying data protection issues could really be time-consuming, so start with this early on. And to summarize, or in a nutshell, there's no one-size-fits-all approach because every consortium is different. It's important to agree on QA goals at the start and to know all legal and administrative requirements, red lines, and leeway of all partners. All relevant stakeholders should be involved in the discussion as equal partners from the beginning. And the most important thing we have seen is trust in our partners and to use all leeways you have. Thank you.
Thank you. So Antonella said piloting different approaches of jointness in different programs. Susanne said no one size fits all. But we also said that there is a limited European approach implementation, for example. So Patrick, what can alliances, institutions with agencies and policymakers do to reduce these barriers for international cross-border accreditation, collaboration? Is there something ENQA can do, EQUA or others?
I think the shortest answer I can give is we are here. We are already here today and tomorrow to start talking about this topic. Not to start talking, to continue talking about this topic. I don't know when you arrived here in Venice. I arrived, I think, now 24 hours ago here. And unless the moment I was asleep in my bed, I've been talking with many of you colleagues I already know and others I met yesterday about this topic, about the positive sides, about ambitions that are very alive in the alliances, but also about some challenges and about different understandings on what this degree label exactly is. I think that it is very good that we have been already for a couple of years talking about this without material, and now there are this draft operational guide is already somewhere, but the fact that there is already somehow a document as a starting point for further discussion, that's already great. Of course, as we all heard this morning, the timeline for further discussion and also the scope for further discussion is limited. Nevertheless, I think we have to take the time now to do this. As you know, as was introduced by Alexander, I'm Vice President of ENQA, and within ENQA we've been active the last couple of months exactly also in the Policy Lab and other discussion fora. What we are currently also doing is to gather reflections on this topic from quality assurance agencies that are somehow interested, involved in the discussions on this topic. So that's what we are gathering. Of course, then I received a couple of times the question, but maybe ENCA can make a public document with how they look at this approach. Then we say no, because a public document would make it more like a statement, and that can be interpreted as we are against this or that. No, at this point, we are in the phase that there are still many questions, and as Jan Mael also pointed out, a lot of questions came out of the first policy lab, and we are happy that what we see that in the next conversations we will all together work with these questions. So I think that's already a very good point. From my other position as head of FOREU4ALL, a quality assurance agency in Belgium, we had, in spring of this year, we had a gathering around internationalization. And one of the things that came out of that is that representatives of alliances in Flanders, and we have many institutions that are part of an alliance, that they don't talk to each other. So, and we made a solution to that. Our other branch, FOREU International, they organized now a week or two ago a meeting for the Flemish representatives to share there a lot of thoughts on working within an alliance. And it would not be a surprise that this topic of the European degree label was the main topic of their first meeting. What is my message here? I think how to remove barriers starts first by talking with each other as representatives of alliances, because there's still much different approaches and clarity. I remember a couple of months ago, I was somewhere abroad on a panel also with Dagmar, and there was a question on the timing for the European degree label, and where we explained the proposed timing, the institutions reacted commonly, oh no, it has to be implemented as soon as possible, we want it next year, because when that is implemented, then we are sure that all national barriers will be gone. So this was the interpretation they made. We were a bit, yeah, Jan Mael is now also, you can't see it, I can see it, he's smiling, oh yes. But it was also interesting to see that in that country, many of the higher education representatives had the idea, well, this system will automatically reduce barriers. So I think there some more information at a certain point has to be given. Of course, it has to come from different sources, and that's why we all have a certain task here. One of the reasons why I just said we can't go too fast, and I know there are strict timings, but one of the dangers if you go too fast and the system is not mature enough, then there is a risk that starting with the product, that there will be strange use, a very different understanding of it. On the other hand, we also understand very well that if we will wait till all barriers on a national level are gone, that we all in the room, also the youngest ones, will be retired. So that's the reality. Well, I'm afraid this is reality. But a couple of things I want you to mention just as an example. The question, and Jan Mael pointed out a question he often receives, what is this European degree label? What is this about? And I'm sure that in the heads of the colleagues who designed it, it's very clear, very straightforward. But still, if you would ask here in the room, what is it exactly? Explain it in 1 or 2 sentences, we will have a big diversity of interpretations. What we, from a quality assurance perspective, see is that we think the label has to be a sign of quality. We hope that it is more than just a political tool, but also a sign of quality. And then, as was already mentioned also in this panel, we, in the European higher education area, we work as institutions and quality assurance agencies and ministries with the system of the European standards and guidelines. And one of the key principles of those European standards and guidelines is that you work with peer review, where you do an on-site visit, and then you don't work only based on paper, but you start talking to the different stakeholders. And there we see that the idea is a bit different. And that's one of the things where we still have to talk about, because this is still a bit unclear, because this is totally different from what we are used to work with, the peer review, with on-site visits, talking. Maybe certain aspects are just a document, but then, of course, documents can be made very easily. And what we don't want is a kind of label that doesn't have a real value. So I think if I see, and I listened also yesterday to all the effort that has been done within alliances for the joint programs, also thinking what do we want from the label, what would be good for us, what can help us, then I think also from the perspective of the European Commission, you want to have a real added value for the European community. Another small point is that we see a lot of, we see that there is a possibility to have also the degree awarded by self-accrediting institutions. That sounds interesting. If you look now at the European approach, there it is now for quality assurance agencies doing that. Perfect. But in many countries, one of the reasons why they don't use the European approach is because institutions say, well, we have self-accrediting powers, we don't need this system, and so on and so on. So I understand this. Those who know me, it's not a coming out when I say that I'm someone really advocating for the European approach. But on the other hand, I do really understand that this European approach is in some countries at this moment not seen as an added value because of the cost, because of many resources, also human resources that are there. When we have then self-accrediting institutions that can award the label, and those might then also award labels in other countries. If you have a partnership with a self-accrediting institution awarding the label also, in fact, in another country, then I'm not sure if on the national level our ministries are in practice, and maybe more than our ministries, our politicians in practice will fully agree that other institutions come on their territory. I think, and I don't want to be negative, but I just look at the reality of the European approach. And again, we have to think about this. And here I see certain barriers, but we have to think about how to overcome them. And we can do this along the way while introducing the label, but still certain thoughts are necessary about this.
Thank you.
Can I just,
yes, please.
Just
but I'm sure we will also have questions maybe on some of these questions later, but go ahead.
Just a small point from quality assurance agencies' perspective is the question how in practice we will be able to assure consistency also of those who will award the label. How will we as quality assurance agency, and now I'm also in fact asking questions to myself, to my organization ENCA, but to all quality assurance agencies, how can we ensure that there is consistency? There will be a financial aspect on that. You can say, well, we see along the way how to deal with that, but both for higher education institutions and for quality assurance agencies, there is this issue. And last point, of course, is to see, are all quality assurance agencies really eligible to do that? And I think there is some more work on feasibility needed there. And I think on other topics we can comment later. Yeah.
Thank you. So we just mentioned the ESG. We mentioned earlier today, I think, the ECTS user guide. All of this is not happening in a vacuum. The ESG are being revised at the moment. I'm sure you've received the email. You have until the 9th of January to provide comments if you wish. Do you think, Dagmar, that this revision will have an impact on the feasibility, the implementation of the European degree label? Or do we need specific changes to support this implementation, maybe also in the European approach or other area?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. First thing I want to say is that rules are very difficult. Laura said yesterday that we have exactly 8 minutes to talk, and that we have to sit in a certain order that matches the photos in the background. And up to now, none of that has happened. So how complicated are things if we have already a European approach that is difficult to be installed in the by the European Commission and by all the accreditation organizations, and now we have a surplus with the label. So, will the European approach or the changes have an influence? Of course they will, because at the core, if you look at the guide, at the core of this label is the use of the European approach and of the European standards and guidelines. So they are a key for it. So if they change, there will be changes for the guide as well. So in a sense, we have three moving targets. We have the ESG that are now in a round of consultation. Then there will be the changes of the European approach based on the European standards and guidelines. And then we also have the label. And so the label, in a sense, as I said before, is to make the European approach of the idea of joint degrees more attractive, to make them more easy, to make them more installed. So that's, in a sense, one of the aims that can be linked to the label, so to make it more attractive. But then you have to ask, does the label solve the problems we had with the European degree or the implementation of the European degree? And what we heard in previous sessions is, well, there's work on a mapping. And I think the mapping is very important, because the mapping will show where the problems really are, problems that are case for the European degree, but that will also be problems for the label, because if that's not solved, we can continue talking about it. So, in a sense, I'm a philosopher, so I will guide you to the paradoxes, because I think the label at this moment is a little bit paradoxical. And it also relates to what Patrick has been saying. What we have, in a sense, if you look at the guide, what is central to it is an application of the European standards and guidelines and the European approach. And above that, there are new criteria that have to be met. But as Patrick said, if you use the European approach in the first instance, then what adds to it is most of all paperwork. Is most administrative, is in a sense a bureaucratic exercise in which you have to show more than what you would have to show if you use the European approach. And it's not just more, in a sense, it's an interpretation of the standards and the criteria that you apply for the European approach. But what you do is that you make a whole new guide that is something new, adding up two procedures that already exist. And adding up procedures to what exists, that's what we call the lasagna model. So you have to prove something at a certain level, and then you have to prove another level, and then you have to prove again another level. And in a sense, this is not another level. It's an interpretation of what already exists, and to make what exists more attractive. So that would be very nice. So, but here we come to the true logical paradox, because in the guide, what you have is the European approach is key, but you rewrite it, you add all kinds of things, and so you make a new guide, a kind of new framework, and so what you have is that European approach is not key, because it's not enough. You have to use something else. So that's a statement and the negation of the statement. At the same time, it's not a paradox, because it's an implementation, it's a certain way of interpreting the European approach and adding up things. And so, in a sense, what you get is a catch-22. And what's the catch-22? Well, I wrote it down because I have to say it truthfully, is to be the label to be attractive for institutions or for alliances. It should be successful in solving problems of the European approach and the national authorities that make that problematic. But to be successful in solving problems of the European approach, it has to be attractive. So people have to be involved in it. So it should not be a niche product. And that's a bit the danger that will happen. You have joint degrees, which are already a niche product, and now you add certain criteria to an already existing niche product. And so if you add new criteria that, as said this morning should not be fulfilled and can be interpreted into the situation of the institution or the alliance, it's still a niche thing that will be created. And so in a sense it contradicts a little bit what is in the guide itself, namely enhance the quality, equity and inclusiveness of European higher education by fostering access to high quality transnational programs. But niche products are not really that inclusive in a sense. So that's also a problem that's created by it, I think. So what would be, so it can be you think he's quite negative about this label. Well, I'm not at all. So it can be a label if it can be used as a label as such, and if it puts the European approach at the center as it should be. And there we come to the idea, if you have a paperwork, then it's not really enhancing the quality of education. If you want to have the enhancement, then you should have a true dialogue between peers. And so also the additional criteria would be best implemented in what you use, namely the European approach and in the dialogue of the European approach. So, as here we are at a meta level, so you have institutions, then you have alliances is a meta level, then you have an alliance of alliances. So what the alliance of alliances or the collaboration between alliances could do is just look at if we have the new European approach, which Patrick said will not change too much, so let's hope so. If that is the case, you could say, well, okay, if we look at the standards and criteria, then what specific interpretation can be given to these standards and criteria to meet the additional requirements set by the label? So just say what additional subjects must be discussed and must be met to have a specific interpretation of the use of the European approach. Then we have the European approach and we have a specific application of the European approach leading to the label. If you meet it, it's okay. If you don't meet it, you still have the European approach and you have quality assurance, external quality assurance of the joint degree that can be used in different countries, and let's hope in this respect it can help to break the national barriers that are on the acceptance of the European approach. So in this sense it could be very valuable, I think, and it could aim or fulfill its aims, but then it should be something practical. Because if it's not practical, if it's a new procedure above another procedure, and as Patrick says, everybody was hopeful that this would break all the national barriers, if we want that to happen, it should be easy. And the easiest way is to be a specific interpretation of something that already exists. Thank you. And Laura is smiling, so I really have to say.
Thank you. Do you have questions on quality announcement, on the label, on the European approach, on the mapping of the different procedures? The colleagues mentioned also the consortium agreement. I think one has a question probably, I don't know, the microphone is there, Alexander as well, and a colleague to the left then.
Now? Yes, right. Yeah, thanks for the very interesting panel, Alexander Shushnia from the European Quality Assurance Register. I just wanted to touch maybe on a few things that Dagmar said. And by the way, Dagmar, I didn't know that we share an academic background. I'm also a philosopher. So this is actually a conceptual comment. So I think that works. When we talk about the relationship between the European degree criteria or the label criteria and the European approach, I do have this kind of a fundamental conceptual distinction. I think it's debatable. I'm curious what all of you will think. So European approach standards are about quality, or at least quality assurance. That is obviously because they're derived from the ESG, which are standards for quality assurance. In my understanding, the European degree criteria are not, at least not in totality, quality criteria. There's something, if I can use the analogy, well, there are plenty of examples, but I'll maybe use the examples from, I know some of the Spanish agencies, QA agencies had the program of evaluating commitments to sustainable development goals, for example. I think it's very clear that when these QA agencies are doing it, what they're doing it is not evaluating the quality of these universities in the traditional sense, how we do quality assurance, right? That is exactly how I see the European degree. It involves some things which are which can be mapped to the quality issue, but they also go beyond. So what I would say is the most pragmatic way, and I fully agree, one of the key issues is simplicity. I cannot emphasize how detrimental to all the things that we build on in European higher education is the overwhelming complexity of it. So we need to reduce complexity as much as possible. I would say go through the European approach accreditation. First of all, we need to procedurally integrate it so that it's one process. That's the first level of simplification. Then in substance, in the criteria, whatever is already a quality criteria does not need to be evaluated again. I go back to the proposal Jan Mael made in the introductory panel. I would be very happy with that. Put it maybe even as an eligibility condition. And then the things that are left over can actually and should be evaluated because they have not been evaluated through the European approach. I would again make an analogy to how some QA agencies are awarding some labels already when they do accreditation of study programs, so universities can opt in. So yeah, I'm just wondering on your reflections on that, do you also see that these are not necessarily quality criteria, or would you say in a certain way these can all be mapped to the quality issues?
Thank you for the question, and I think I fully agree with you. The one thing is the simplicity, so have it in one evaluation, but also because this morning, and I think that was quite revealing if they said, well, okay, it's not really a standard that has to be met, it's a kind of intention you need to have to work on and see how far some things are evolved in the system. And so that's the difficult thing. So that's something that has to be discussed. That's something that cannot be in paperwork. And that's why I would suggest if you can integrate it in this one procedure in which you have a panel, in which you have peers that can also discuss in what sense you're meeting some of these criteria that are not really on the quality assurance side, but that also have to be met if you want a label. So you can have a true discussion on what is the quality of the program, and then you just have some extra additional things that have to be met that are not really related to the quality assurance, but that are related to obtaining the label. And so you can discuss it, but surely I think it's valuable to discuss it if you have this range of interpretation again of are you busy doing it and how far is it implemented? Because if you don't discuss it, it becomes a paperwork, and I think artificial intelligence is smart enough to make the most beautiful stories about how you meet these things. So just what you already have, and you will have a story about it. But is the story alive in an alliance, in a program? The importance is to discuss it, to see how much it is alive, and to have the peer review on it. So of course there should be the distinction, but I think it can be integrated if it's for a label. It's not.
I don't think it's still working.
Yeah? Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much. I wanted to react to two things. The first is the expectation management regarding the potential removal of barriers that a label can do. I think Jan Mael already talked about this in the morning. I think barriers have two elements. One, it's probably the most important one, the barriers we have in our minds, which is the lack of creativity to overcome barriers, which we see, I think, every day. And this is visible because joint programs exist with great cooperation arrangements. The problem is that not everybody is in a position to solve, to approach those challenges. Here it's clear that the label can have a key role, giving those examples that everyone can follow. But then we need to be, I think, really careful on what we expect from the label when it comes to the actual removal of legal barriers. A label can only get you so far. And here is where I think as a sector we need to press for coordinated regulatory changes. Really important, coordinated. when you look at the different ecosystem of higher education legislations across Europe, it's absolutely terrible, because even good intentions have led to terrible outcomes. You have changes only for Erasmus Mundus programs, but not applicable to any normal programs. You have like all this like of, I don't know, it's really, from a legal perspective, it makes you cry, right? So what do we need for that? I think many of the pilot projects suggested more top-down coordination from the Commission. I think that would be the desirable part. But then even at the level of the ministers, there needs to be technical working groups really discussing how to make those changes, because otherwise it gets to a random public servant in a country and it doesn't work. So then I think that, first of all, adjusting expectations about the label will be really important so we get there, and then it's clear that we need a real European degree. This is the first part. The second part, about the use of the instrument, I think the reflections by Dagmar were really interesting. In the end, for me, the bottom line is, I don't know what the European degree label is, but I know that even before existing, it works. How do we see it? Well, 2 years ago, we had 25 registered programs in ECAR for the joint programs. I think now we have close to 100. Would this have happened without this momentum? I know that now, in my alliance, we can design cooperation agreements taking into account the criteria. So I think the lesson here is momentum is key and community is key, and maybe those were not there before the European degree, and we need to keep that. So yeah, just a couple of reflections, and really happy to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Susanne or Antonia, are we not creative enough in the way we work?
Well, I think that you made a very nice point regarding barrier, what they are, and there are barriers at different levels, I agree, and lack of creativity is one of the things that we face at the really beginning of our setup of joint masters. So it's true, sometimes we identify barrier, and then looking at the national rules or even local rules, we don't find, we are not enough creative to bypass them, but then you can bypass until a certain limit. You can be creative, and believe me, I am very creative, until a certain limit. Then when it comes to legal issue, then that you map, then you need to really create a table with accreditation agency and ministry, which is actually what that personally we did, thanks also to the pilot project at a FISH, and also internally in our university. What is, I think, is really important, and it should be taken seriously into account, is exactly the relevance to make the change in the proper way. Meaning that we know the barrier, we are creative, we bypass what we can bypass legally, but then we know that legal changes needs to be done, and this needs to be established in a open way and clear way, not for specific program, because exactly what it happened, I mean, I think all over Europe, is that for some specific program, you have specific rule. And this I don't think is good, because it makes confusion, it complicates the administrative burden, and then it just lowers the interest that the people have in activating any kind of program. So I foresee the European degree label as something that will be successful. And just coming back to the previous discussion, I also see the European approach, in my view, more as a tool to arrive to the European degree label. I don't believe the European degree label is the European approach, but having spent so much time in set up joint master, I believe that the implementation of the European approach can help us in activate joint master, and this joint master, by creating, respecting the criteria, that they can have the label. And in this process, if we are smart enough, we may also be able to modify, from a legal point of view, the national legislation to go toward this objective. So, yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you. Susanne, shortly, and then we have the colleague on the right side of the room from your perspective.
Just one addition. Creativity means also that we have to be brave enough to use all leeway we have. For example, we also be creative in our joint programs regarding some legal questions. That works. Everyone says, okay, this is really the red line. We can go so far as we read the pink part of the red line. So we have to be brave enough. That's the key point.
Thank you. We still have some time. The colleague a few rows to the back and then to the Commission.
Isabelle Depree from Thomas More Heroes Alliance. We already had a lot of philosophical discussions here, but I'm more pragmatic. So a question to Antonella and Suzanne. Would you try to get the European degree label now after you already have accredited your joint programs? Would you do an extra effort to gain the label? If yes or no, what?
I would love to do so personally, so yes, the answer is yes. But in the building up of the joint master that we activated already, we don't fulfill yet completely the criteria. Something that we are bypassing now with the fourth one because we know the criteria. For the other one, we are really working hard within the alliance in order to fulfill the only one that is missing, which is to have only one degree, only one paper for the joint program. So, but the answer is yes. I think it will, I will definitely go ahead and try to have the label after I've spent much time in the creation of the joint degree. Yeah.
Same for our joint degrees. We have done an accreditation by the European approach. So we have done a couple of tasks we should do for the European degree label, but there are some issues we have to solve. For example, the question of inclusivity. As one of our joint masters has an Erasmus Mundus funding, and inclusivity and Erasmus Mundus funding are two worlds.
Thank you. I think Jan-Mai wanted, and then Fernando, and then maybe we close it because Laura and Mara still have a few words to share with you before the lunch break.
I'll try to be quick. So Fernando also get to ask a question or make a comment. No, thank you very much. There's a lot of things that, of course, we heard during the first policy lab, and I think everyone working on drafting the documents has taken that very much into consideration, how to provide a reassurance that this is not a process that goes in all different directions, is implemented differently depending on it's a quality assurance agency, a self-regulating institution in different countries. I think there are ways to make sure that everyone can be comfortable with the process and that it's safe. Now, I wanted also to react on the point on the European approach. So the European approach is in the document is quite predominant there, because if we didn't mention the European approach, then we would have been told that we are just redoing the European approach. So I wanted to show that we are not redoing it. We are saying this is extremely important to ensure the quality of the program in general, because it's a joint program, first and for all. But it's also a program that has specific dimension that pertain not to quality assurance processes, but more to a labeling process, which it is what it is. And I think sometimes in these discussions I have a bit the feeling that we are kind of thinking we are inventing the notion of a label even. This is not the first label to be ever created. I mean, this is not so, it shouldn't be so hard. But what I wanted to say as well is that of course, when we look ahead in the implementation, so how does it work? Everything that is checked by the European approach is checked by the European approach. There's no need to recheck that. So, for example, for a program that we are just evaluated using a European approach, of course, this evaluation should not be done again for the sake of getting a label. This is done. So the only part that would need to be verified is, do you have these specific elements that grant you access to the label? And now, it's important to take time, but it's also important to start somewhere. Now, we'll never be in a situation where we start and we only have new programs being created, being evaluated, and then getting the label. We have joint programs that exist already today, you designed them. What about those? Can they apply to get the label without having to redo the entire European approach because it's integrated into it? Can there be some small ad hoc evaluation? Does it need a site visit? You tell me. I think we didn't want to suggest it because it would sound like too much burden for the quality assurance agencies and for the applicants. So on that, we consider that there is an on-site visit because it's in the standard of the European approach already. So there has been a site visit of evaluating the quality of the program. Then the rest maybe doesn't require so much a site visit. But ideally in the future, these two should be integrated. So of course, we say, for example, the label is awarded for the duration for which the evaluation is valid. So you've been evaluated 3 years ago using the European approach. You apply for the label. Okay, it's going to be valid for 3 years because that's the time of duration of the evaluation. Then in 3 years' time, you undergo a new evaluation, and then the label is checked at the same time. So it's only in transition phase in which there will be an ad hoc evaluation needed for those programs that already exist. But in a horizon of 6 years max, everything should be integrated into the first evaluation, ideally using the European approach or the standards of the European approach, and then everything should be smooth. But we'll have to accept this transition phase in which we have to decide, is that okay to have a partial evaluation, ad hoc, with site visit or not, you tell me. But then in the long run, of course, these two things should be evaluated because that's what makes the most sense.
If I may just shortly respond to this, I think you now also asked a lot of questions, and I think for all of us, we need at a certain point continue discussing this, very valuable points. Is this really necessary or not? But I think there has to become at a certain point some clarity, but also first, before we have clarity, we have discussion. And there is a short timeline, and that's one of the things where I try to make the point that we have to be sure that the whole system is mature, so that all the efforts that has been done by you and all the others is not something that will lead to one of the so many labels, but that it has really an added value for higher education.
Final question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Fernando Caram, Executive Director from EU Connexus. I have had the opportunity to be also in different roles. I was president of SUI and I sit in the drafting group of the ESGs 2015, and also I've been evaluator of several QA agencies. I'm thinking that the trees are not allowing us to see the forest, and we are going around many things. ESGs are not standards for quality, I'm sorry. ESGs are a framework for quality assurance. It's a completely different story. The European approach is a tool to interpret the ESGs in the joint programs. It's also not the standards for quality. The criteria of the level are criteria for a label, also not a standard for quality. Then we can say what the label is for. That's a different discussion. If it is a label of quality, of jointness, of an added value, that's almost a philosophical discussion. We have good philosophers around the table, so that's good as well. Yeah, that's as a framework for the whole discussion. Taking my background as an evaluator of QA agencies, I actually took the criteria, and I took an example of one joint master from my alliance to see how we could evaluate it. I only needed 2 documents, the consortium agreement and the evaluation report, no more. I could check all the criteria with those 2 documents and evaluate if that joint program will fit the criteria or not. Very simple. It took me half an afternoon. I did it. So I'm thinking that we are overcomplicating our lives. Sorry.
Thank you, Antonella. Yes.
If I can react to that, that's what actually is really important, the consortium agreement that needs to be very well done, taking into consideration all the different aspects. And that's what actually we realize during the phase on creating the joint master. And there are not really templates circulating, so you have to build your own, and that can be challenging. But I agree. I mean, if you have a good consortium agreement, then we'll say that would be enough with the evaluation document. Yeah.
Thank you. These are all the topics you will talk about in the workshops this afternoon. But first, let us thank the panelists, and then please stay in the room for the next part. So Mara and Laura will guide us through what is expected of us this afternoon.
Okay, normally we have a little interactive session. We would like to ask you what we are missing in this event, what questions aren't we addressing, and then during the evening, the organization committee and the speakers will meet to try to respond. So I need to use 2 computers now, so be quick with the QR code. The quicker you are, the sooner the lunch. Does it work? No? Okay.
Si vede più il
Lo so perché dovevo...
lo metto io dall'altro computer.
E dove lo metti?
Lo posso mettere io.
Vicino qui?
Per farlo vedere.
Lo so che devo...
Un altro posto, se vuoi.
We're not on the slide, you have to go.
Posso farlo vedere io.
Okay, so sorry, it's very confusing. To respond to your questions, first we need to know the target group. So what is your role? Are you a joint program coordinator? Quality assurance officer, policy advisor, secretary general, external stakeholders or other? Many others, oh my God. That will be difficult. Ma tanto possono anche fare da qui, Non serve perché guarda, possono farlo anche da qui. You can also join the Menti through the website using the code on the screen. Second question, joint programs in our alliances. Do you have joint programs already running, planned or in development? Both or not planned? And then, how confident are you in your ability to contribute to the implementation of joint programs? Very confident. It's decreasing. Okay, 3.9, good average. Next question. Which challenge do you envision when implementing a joint program in one word? 2 is also okay, but short then. French administration. I think we should make a poster out of this.
we will not be able to solve the problem of trust and funding tomorrow night in the closing session, unfortunately.
French legislation also tough. Okay, we can move to the next question. On the European degree label, how confident are you in your joint program be aligned with European degree criteria? I see PPMI with fingers crossed. Happy with the result? Okay, next question. Which is the most challenging criteria to be implemented or assessed? This is the first category. So we have higher education institutions involved, transnational joint degree delivery, joint arrangements, quality assurance arrangements, graduate tracking, student-centered, transnational campus, mobility, dissertation, joint dissertation. So we are addressing the right topics here. Okay, and then the second part of the criteria, which is for you the most challenging to be implemented or assessed. Interdisciplinarity and research-based learning, opportunities for learning beyond academia and employability, digitalization, values, multilingualism, inclusiveness, and environmental sustainability. Inclusiveness. Okay, this is the last question for tomorrow's session. What do you still need to be clarified? No need, I mean, maybe keep the Mentimeter open, and if you lose the link, just drop an email to me and Mara, yeah, before 6. That would be nice. Okay.
So here you can list all questions you'd like to see answered. Of course, we're not going to be able to answer all of them, but the ones that we can answer, we'll try and aim to answer them tomorrow. But it's also important for us to share the remaining questions or challenges with, well, with PPMI and with the rest of the members of the groups that will be receiving the report and that are with us online as well.
Thank you. So what happens next? Very difficult because it's a labyrinth here, so be careful. From now until 1:50, we will have lunch, and then we will ask you to come where the registration happened, so where we met yesterday night and where you registered this morning, at 1:50 sharp, because there will be students accompanying us to the rooms. For each room, you will have one person of the organization committee to facilitate and take notes. But we will ask to each group to choose a rapporteur, because we really want to, I mean, again, it's a working meeting. We all know each other very well, so we really want as many people as possible contributing to this event. So we meet again at the coffee break first, at 3:15, and then after the coffee break here again. Yes, and the number of your table is behind your badge. Enjoy your lunch.